Desperate builders beg the RBA to stop. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heiser here and welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. Grab your stein of coffee because I thought we'd have a look at this article from the RBA, about construction industry bodies raising a bit of fear and concern about the rate rise that the RBA has done. Now, if we just jump here, we can see the cash rate has actually climbed up. I've had to update this chart so often, I forgot to update the text. You can see there, it's gone up to, 1.5 percentage points or 1.35 percentage points? Hang on, let me just go over here to the RBA website and quickly check. What are we sitting at? 1.35. But don't worry, guys, we'll get to 1.5. Now, these are insanely low rates. They are very, very low. Even at 1.5%, this cash rate historically is quite low. We've only known good times. That rates have been so cheap. People are mentioning the 18% back in the day. We're going to talk about the 0.1% like they spoke about the 18%. It's that rare and crazy. And future generations are going to go, wow, you had it so easy, guys. You could buy a house and interest rates were only 0.1%. So let's have a look at this because we are starting to see, and we're tracking here on the channel, all of the, construction industry issues that are occurring, guys. And you'll find a link actually to a Google document where we're collecting all of these companies, and I'll start discussing them, and we'll plan to map them out. So if you want to help out with that, please help out. I appreciate it. I noticed someone's already putting companies in there. It's depressing, but it's something we need to be aware of because, sure, there is a construction apocalypse going on, but it really seems to be centered in the residential sector. Now, if we have a lot of residential builders starting to fall over or putting their hands up going, I can't be bothered, I'm getting out, and I can't blame them. You get older after a while, you kind of think, I'll just have less stress and be happier. Because you hear these stories of these builders, they're risking their homes on pretty much every job, particularly the smaller ones. And what happens if we have a sudden increase in population demand or housing demand and not the builders to provide it? So let's have a look at this. Too far, builders' desperate plea to the RBA, written by Rebecca Borg on news.com.au. The construction industry's peak body is urging the Reserve Bank to rethink future rate hikes as another rise could cripple the sector. Mortgage holders aren't the only ones feeling the financial sting of consecutive interest rate hikes, with the construction industry also bearing the brunt as Australians reconsider building their new homes. The building sector's peak body is calling on the Reserve Bank of Australia to give more time between rate rises to assess its economic impact on the wider economy. Do any of us have any the RBA is a reactionary. They really feel like reactionary. I don't have any confidence in them. You tell me in the comments if you do. I don't think any of us do, really. The RBA lifted the cash rate to 1.35% this week, the third rate rise in as many months, and the first since 2019 that the rate has been first time since it's been above 1%. Now, 3% used to be considered the emergency rate. I want to remind everyone, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but we need to get the wider community appreciative of all of the interventions the government did in the economy, and these are the repercussions, these are the damage. This is the damage that we're occurring now. When you plunge rates artificially low, it's going to have impacts. And right now, here, they changed the rules. They kept zombie companies alive, everyone. You've got just continued juicing of the housing market for both sides of politics. It's not going to be any different under Labor. It's not going to be any different under Liberal when it comes to interventions in the market for political gains. Well, the worst thing now is we've got shared equity being discussed rationally. The government would rather take tax dollars off you and use it to help people get into housing, like buying parts of houses, than let the market correct. Master Builders Australia Chief Executive Danita Wan has called on the RBA to delay further rate rises to soften the impact on the industry. Come on, what's going on there? There we go. We're concerned that a continuing regime of steep rate rises risks turning the economic dial too far in the opposite direction and stalling the economic growth needed for the continued recovery from COVID-19. Time should be given to observe the impact of the monetary policy changes in the economy. Rising interest rates threaten to put further pressure on an industry already grappling with rising costs of materials, transport, and supply shortages. The impact of rising expenses has also been so detrimental that some building groups have collapsed as a result, with family-owned Langford Jones, one of the most recent construction companies to go into liquidation. We'll have to have a look at that one. Despite the builder's shareholders investing extra funds in a desperate attempt to keep the company above water, rising labour and material costs, as well as a recent cyber attack, proved too much to withstand. It joins a number of other builders, yes. We've heard about all of these. Wolfram, we discussed yesterday, affordable modular homes, statement builders, we'll have to look at those. I want to map these out to show where they're going. And you've got to understand these are predominantly in the residential sector, the sector that the government overheated with their stimulus. Okay, this is the price we're paying with Home Builder, with all the handouts and all of these things. Ms. Swan said another interest rate hike would add to those pre-existing pressures, which many may simply be too much for some businesses to handle. Our industry is disproportionately affected by interest rises, and a hard economic landing would put at risk the viability of many building and construction businesses who have managed to come through the pandemic, but whose resilience has been eroded by severe supply chain pressures. Many now lack the resilience to withstand more sharp economic shocks. Interest rate rises weren't expected to occur until 2024, based on October's RBA predictions. Exactly. They weren't expected to go up until 2024. That's why all of us locked in, or 40% of us locked in our rates, because we don't trust the Reserve Bank. We don't trust the Reserve Bank. And I mean, also, here's another thing I want to draw your attention. We've got huge government debt that stimulated all of this. And this is future tax and work that we will all need to do, guys. However, a number of international and domestic factors contributed to an early rise in inflation, so interest rates were imposed to counter these effects. Okay, so explain to me how increasing the interest rate, reducing people's purchasing power to spend on housing, which is not completely calculated in inflation, forcing people to, reducing their purchasing power. Maybe they will be able to, everyone who's got a mortgage will be spending less on discretionary items. But how much of our discretionary items are imported from overseas? This is not going to have any effect on that. Is all the importers suddenly going to reduce their cost base to their costs to get, to make up for the lost revenue, perhaps, to impact inflation? How is it going to impact supply side cost increases? Tell me. I'm trying to think about it, guys. If we jump over to, let me bring up the Observatory of Economic Complexity. It's been a while since we've gone to that one. We'll jump over to this screen here. And once it loads up, we can see why is it going slow? How much of our economy is dependent on imports. Okay, there we go. Timed out. What's going on? Anyway, the regulars know how dependent we are on imports here in Australia. So economists predict interest rates will keep rising until the end of the year, with the cash rate expected to surpass 2%. Inflation in Australia is also high, but not as high as in many other countries, RBA Governor Philip Lowe said after Tuesday's meeting. Higher interest rates will also help establish a more sustainable balance between the demand for and supply of goods and services. While another rate rise may be unavoidable, Ms. Swan has urged the RBA to evaluate the effects of the most recent rate rise before proceeding with another. Today's decision reinforces the need for the federal government to ensure that its fiscal policies, indeed all economic levers, must be tested against their ability to drive down inflation and increase productivity, she said. I mean, she's right. She's right. Let's have a talk about that. Everything's broken today. She's right, guys. I mean, this is going to have a dramatic impact on the housing sector, but the government uses the housing sector to stimulate the economy. I saw an article that was sent through to me by a colleague, and it was regarding architects and our potential risk we're taking on for housing and liability when you don't correct people that their dreams are utter bullshit. You know, you can't afford that with your money, you know, and they still go ahead with it. I'll read it. I'll go through it, and I'll read it probably from my other channel, actually. I'll put it on education because it is very important, but it just shows you how crazy this whole market is. It's just nuts. It's overheated. It's what's going to happen if you overstimulate a sector to keep the economy going. When you remove that stimulus, you're going to have some damage to that sector. And it may manifest in businesses going under. It may manifest in shoddy builds. Look at the quality of construction that's come out of New South Wales. Look at all the apartments that have got issue after issue after issue. That was an overheated market due to foreign investment driving work into that sector. Everyone was so bloody busy. It was just going gangbusters. That's what happens. So I can't say I'm at all surprised. What do you reckon, guys? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on that one. If you want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can. You can financially support us via joining us on YouTube or Patreon, use any of our referral links, buy a Pocket Squares, or call us if you need an architect. I'm using a different camera today because, to be quite honest, I'm recording this while my computer with 16 processors, 16 chips, is just using, hang on, I will jump over here to show you again. I've got 16 cores, okay, and I'm doing something in Revit, and I can't do anything else in it, but that process only uses one core, so why don't I buy all 16? Anyway, so this is while I'm waiting. I'm waiting 15 minutes for doing an operation, so I might as well record a video. Anyway, guys, that shows you. Take care, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode.